Hey everyone, Bob Jablonsky here with Jablonsky Tax Relief. If you received an IRS CP504 notice, this is a serious warning, but it's also an opportunity. Because of the verbiage on the notice, this is often a very confusing notice for taxpayers. In this video, I'll explain what a CP504 really means, what the IRS can and can't do at this stage, and how to protect yourself before these things escalate further. Most taxpayers don't realize this, but the CP504 is often the last notice before the IRS sends a final notice and starts with levies and garnishments. Ignoring it can be costly, but responding correctly can stop enforcement. So what is a CP504 notice? The CP504 is titled Notice of Intent to Levy, but it's important to understand what this really means. While the IRS can levy your state tax refund after this notice, they do not yet begin levying your bank account, your paycheck, or other assets. However, they are getting very close and are warning you that enforcement is coming. You may also see the IRS file a federal tax lien or take other steps at this point. But remember that they must file a notice of a final intent to levy before they can actually start taking your assets. So why did you receive a CP504? You usually receive a CP504 only after receiving the notices that include the CP14, which is the notice of the amount that you owe the government and a demand for payment. You then typically get reminder notices, CP501 and CP503. The IRS is sending you the CP504, and it's getting more threatening because they believe, whether it's true or not true, that you have failed to respond to these earlier notices and you're not attempting to resolve your issue. So they then send this CP504. And while it does not allow them to yet levy your bank account or wages, they are letting you know a final notice of intent to levy is next. And that is when they can start taking stuff. Think of the CP504 as that last yellow light before that red light comes and bad things really start to happen. So what should you do when you get this notice? This is where taking action matters. You still have good options at this point. You can set up one of the many installment agreements that are available with the IRS, whether it's a guaranteed or a streamlined or a non-streamlined or a partial pay installment agreement. You can set up all of those agreements. You may be able to request currently not collectible status or request an offer in compromise if you qualify for these alternatives. You can file missing tax returns if that's one of the things the IRS is looking for. You can request penalty abatement or resolve incorrect balances. There's a lot you can do depending on what the solution is to your problem. You can also begin to work with a tax professional before enforcement begins. The important thing to remember is that taking action now is much easier and much cheaper than waiting for a levy notice and then having to deal from the perspective of the IRS is taking your assets. So here are some things that you don't want to do when you get this notice. You don't want to ignore it because it's just going to go on to the next step, and then you are at risk of levies, whether it's your bank account being emptied or your paycheck being garnished. You don't want to panic and call the IRS without a plan because the IRS has two plans for you usually. One is to pay them in full immediately or set up an installment agreement at the highest amount you can afford to pay. You don't want to agree to a payment you can't afford because you're just going to default on that payment and bigger problems are going to occur. And you don't want to start doing some things out of panic, like withdrawing retirement funds or taking actions by liquidating other assets that's just going to create bigger problems with you and may also create tax problems. Your goal is to stop escalation, not make things worse. So take this opportunity when you get this to avoid escalating collection action, but do not make your situation worse by panicking. So if you've received an IRS CP504 notice and you want help choosing the right next step, at Jablonsky Tax Relief, I help taxpayers nationwide stop IRS escalation and resolve tax debt properly. To get help, contact us today by calling 972-821-1991 or by clicking the link below. Like this video, subscribe for more IRS tax problem solutions, and leave your questions below.